Alright, this is video number 19 in the series, and I hope this will be an interesting one. I'm going to start out with a Danhauser exercise, which involves switching between treble and bass clef, which will be good for score reading skills. And then I'll move on to the first simple examples in alto clef as well. After that, we'll move on to Danhauser and see some examples with multiple flats, and finally see an example in a different key, A minor. And then I'm going to also start working a little bit less linearly in the Danhauser book and include an example in A minor in bass clef as well. But let's go ahead and get to that first example with switching clefs in Danhauser. And it looks like this. We'll take this at a little bit slower tempo than we've been doing in treble and bass, about like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll give you a count of 4 like that. Let's go ahead and group these as they're beamed, so putting an accent on the first syllable of each beam. Let's go ahead and do this one. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do, sol, mi, do, re, mi, si, sol, fa, re, sol, fa, do, sol, mi, do, re, sol, si, fa, re, si, mi, sol, do, mi, re, sol, si, re, si, la, sol, re, fa, la, do, la, fa, sol, si, re, si, sol, re, si, sol, re, si, sol, fa, re, si, sol, do, mi, sol, do, mi, sol, mi, do. All right, let's go ahead and look at our first example in alto clef. And it looks like this. I'm going to go ahead and look at two actually at once because they're so simple. But if you're not familiar with alto clef, it's a type of C clef, which means that the middle of the clef there represents C, the first notes in both examples. And the alto clef is used by viola, for example, or we might use it when we're reading a transposing instrument, which I'll talk about in a later video. But let's go ahead and do this one at a relatively slow tempo. The reference pitches are going to be do and sol, and those are the only notes that occur in this example. So let's go ahead and do this one at a nice slow tempo. We'll take it about like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll just give you a ready and we'll come in on the do. All right, here we go. Ready and do, 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 sol, do, sol, do, sol, do, do, do. And the next one at the same tempo. Ready and do, sol, do, sol, do, 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 sol, do, do, sol, do, 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 sol, do, do. All right, and let's go ahead and look at the third example, which includes some adjacent pitches to these notes C and G. It looks like this, just like we've seen for treble and bass clef. Nothing too difficult. We'll take it about the same tempo. Let's go ahead and read the groups as they're written. So groups of 3, and then in the second system you can see there are also a couple groups of 2. All right, let's do it. Ready and do, re, do, sol, la, sol, do, si, do, si, do, sol, fa, sol, do, re, do, re, do, re, sol, fa, do, si, do, re, sol, la, do, si, do, sol, do. All right, so that's just a simple introduction to alto clef. Start thinking about it. We'll get to some other examples in the next video. But let's go ahead and move on to Danhauser. And the first one is going to be similar to what we saw in the last video, only adding a couple more flats. We're going to have 4 flats in this one. Also in the key is C major. Let's take a look at it. It looks like this. I'm going to go ahead and put in some grace notes. And again, I'm basically doing the same thing that I did in the last video, adding the notes below to which those flat notes tune to. And as I mentioned in the last video, that does not mean that you necessarily drag down the pitch at all. It's going to depend on the consensus of your ensemble. If you're singing with a piano, for example, you're going to want to sing more in equal temperament. And like I said, it's going to depend on your ensemble. So let's go ahead and do this one. We'll conduct a 3/4 pattern. We'll take it a hair slower than indicated. I'm going to take about 82, which is about like this. 1, 2, 3. First, we'll do a quick C major warm-up. Do, mi, sol, la, fa, re, si, do. All right, let's do it. Give you a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Do, sol, mi, la, sol, la, sol, fa, fa, mi, mi. Do, si, la, re. Do, re, do. Mi, re, mi, re. Re, re. Mi, re. Mi, re. Mi, re, mi, re, mi, re, mi, re, mi, fa, sol, la, 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 sol, sol, la, do, sol, la, re, si, do, mi, re, do, si, si, la, sol, sol, la, si, do, mi, re, do, si, la, sol, do, sol, mi, la, sol, fa, fa, mi, do, si, la, re, do, re, do, sol, la, do, sol, la, re, si, do. All right, and before we get to the first example in A minor, I want to do a warm-up, which is very simple. It's just the natural minor, the harmonic minor, and the melodic minor scales, because these should really be internalized before doing any exercises in a minor key, because they're so important. So let's go ahead and simply sing through the three scales that I mentioned. And they look like this. So first we've got la, si, do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do, si, la. Then we've got la, si, do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do, si, la. And lastly, the melodic, we have la, si, do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do, si, la. So that should prepare us relatively well. I recommend practicing these a lot, especially if you feel like they're difficult for you. But let's go ahead and look at example 101, which is the very first example in a different key, in the relative minor of C major, A minor. One of the things I want to point out is that we're finally seeing some dynamics here, so I want you to really take those into consideration in your performance. We'll go ahead and take it in a 2 pattern at the tempo indicated, 76. Let's quickly do an A minor warm-up. La, do, mi, fa, re, si, sol, la. All right, I'll give you a ready and, basically a full measure. Here we go. Ready and. La, sol, la, mi, la, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, la, do, mi, fa, re, do, si, la, sol, do, si, la, sol, sol, la, si, mi, do, la, mi, la, sol, la, mi, la, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, do, si, sol, la, sol, si, mi, sol, si, do, la, sol, si, mi, la, si, sol, la. All right, so hopefully that wasn't so difficult. Let's go ahead and look at an example in bass clef. Like I said, I'm going to start working a little bit less linearly. And since we've already had so many syllable exercises in bass clef, I thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and do a bass clef example in A minor right off the bat. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So again, I want you to take note of the dynamics. Let's integrate those into our performance. And also there are some slurs which we haven't seen before, like in the first measure of the second system, or first measure of the third system. And I want you to integrate those slurs into your performance as well, just as the breath marks as usual. So we're going to be stopping in the third system and doing a C major warm-up, as he kind of hangs out in C major a little bit there. And then we're going to again stop in the third measure of the fourth system. I guess I could have placed that at the piano in the second measure of that fourth system as well. But I placed it in the third measure. We're going to go ahead and stop there and do an A minor warm-up. And then I'll give you a count of 3, as in the third system as well. And we'll continue from that point. So pay attention to those dynamics and articulations. Let's go ahead and do this one. Conduct a 3 pattern. We're going to take it at the tempo indicated. All right, quick A minor warm-up. La, do, mi, fa, re, si, sol, la. So first note's mi. All right, here we go. Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Mi, la, do, si, la, do, la, do, mi, re, do, si, la, re, do, si, mi, la, do, si, la, fa, mi, re, do, si, re, sol, la. Stop. Do, mi, sol, la, fa, re, si, do. 1, 2, 3. Sol, do, mi, re, do. Sol, do, mi, re, do, si, do. Stop. La, do, mi, fa, re, si, sol, la. 1, 2, 3. La, si, sol, la, si, do, la, si, sol, la, mi, la, do, si, la, do, la, do, mi, re, do, si, la, re, do, si, mi, la, do, si, la, fa, mi, re, do, si, re, sol, la. All right, and that's going to do it for this one. In the next video, we'll continue with some of the same material, switching between treble and bass clef, a little bit more alto clef. We'll see some more examples in A minor and treble and bass clef, and also get to our first example in the key of G major. But until then, I wish you, as usual, happy sight singing.